The most catastrophic mistake you will ever make as a man is confusing a woman's situational gratitude with her permanent loyalty. You look at the enthusiastic morning texts, the passionate intimacy, and the way she looks at you across a candlelit dinner table, and you convince yourself that you have found someone truly special. But you have not uncovered her character. You have merely uncovered her capacity to enjoy a five-star experience. But there is one specific, deeply hidden psychological tell, a microscopic shift in her baseline behavior that I am going to reveal at the very end of this breakdown. Once you learn this single concept, the illusion will shatter, and you will never be blindsided by a sudden betrayal ever again. And this is exactly where most men sign their own emotional death warrants. They evaluate a partner based on how she behaves when the environment is perfectly tailored to her comfort. If you are paying for the lifestyle, shielding her from stress, and absorbing her emotional chaos, of course she is going to act like a loving partner. You are not measuring her character in those moments. You are measuring the effectiveness of your own resources. Character is not a reaction to luxury. Character is the rigid skeletal structure of a person's morality that remains standing when all the luxury is stripped away. But here is the brutal truth that keeps men awake at night. The vast majority of modern romantic behavior is entirely performative. It is a highly curated audition designed to secure a specific outcome. Psychologists refer to this as strategic compliance. It is the human brain's ability to mirror the desires of a provider in order to maintain access to the benefits that provider supplies. If you want to know who she really is, you cannot look at the audition. You have to look at the rehearsal, the quiet, unmonitored moments when the director has left the room and the camera is turned off, because this is the exact moment the mask begins to slip. You see, the trap of a frictionless relationship is that it weaponizes your own peace against you. When you are the one steering the ship through calm waters, compliance costs her absolutely nothing. It is incredibly easy to be sweet when all of your bills are paid, your anxiety is managed by someone else, and your daily friction is zero. Many men fall completely into the trap of confusing a lack of resistance with a presence of devotion, but lack of resistance just means the current is flowing in her direction. Devotion is a terrifying, immovable force that forces a person to row against the current simply because you are the one in the boat with them. And this brings us to the ultimate dividing line between men who get used and men who get respected. You have to stop confusing an operating system with a temporary software patch. A software patch is an external update. It is a temporary behavioral modification she downloads to fit into your life right now because she needs something from you. Maybe she needs a financial safety net. Maybe she needs a rebound from a toxic ex. Maybe she just needs a biological clock pacifier. Whatever it is, the software patch makes her act like the perfect girlfriend. But an operating system is who she is at her core, long before she met you and long after she gets what she wants. To avoid waking up one day next to a stranger, you must completely overhaul your internal lie detector. You have to stop reacting to the symptoms and start diagnosing the disease. The symptom is how she speaks to you. The disease is how she acts when you are not there to enforce the rules. Words are the absolute cheapest currency in the modern dating market. They can be manufactured, rehearsed, and deployed with zero collateral. If you are auditing a woman's character by listening to her promises, you are reading a marketing brochure and expecting it to be a legally binding contract. A woman's true character is not written in her promises. It is carved into her historical patterns of behavior, and this is where the blind spots destroy the average guy. The very first invisible stress test of any relationship is how she manages external validation when she is completely isolated from your influence. Most men mistakenly believe that loyalty is a protective shield a woman holds up when other men approach her. But genuine loyalty is not a shield. It is an internal thermostat. When a woman goes on a girls' trip, travels for a corporate conference, or simply doom scrolls on social media at 2 a.m., she is suddenly placed in an environment rich with external validation. For a woman operating on a performative software patch, this isolation acts as an absolute green light. She treats your physical absence as a temporary suspension of her relationship status. She will entertain the orbiters, reply to the subtle direct messages, and soak up the attention because her loyalty was only ever an accessory she wore to match your presence. But here is the reality check that changes the entire game. You have to observe if her loyalty is a PR strategy designed to keep you investing, or if it is a rigid internal law she obeys even when breaking it would carry zero consequences. You identify this by watching the microscopic boundaries. Does she enforce the exact same rigid barriers with male coworkers when you are across the country as she does when you are sitting next to her at a dinner party? This is not about installing tracking apps or becoming a paranoid warden. It is about recognizing the stark difference between a woman who fears the consequences of getting caught and a woman who is disgusted by the very concept of betrayal. True integrity operates in total darkness. It does not require an audience, and it does not require a threat. It is fueled entirely by her understanding that the bond you share is sacred ground. You must internalize the harsh reality that distance does not manufacture infidelity. Distance merely removes the societal supervision that was forcing her to act correctly. If she crumbles the second you stop supervising her, she was never yours to begin with. The freedom simply accelerated the inevitable. To deeply comprehend the mechanics of a romantic betrayal, you must master the difference between a tourist and an architect. A tourist visits a beautiful city when the weather is perfect. They take photos, enjoy the restaurants, and soak up the culture. But the exact moment a hurricane hits, the tourist books the first flight out. Because a tourist has no permanent stake in the foundation, they are only there to extract an experience. An architect, however, stays during the hurricane. The architect goes down into the mud to reinforce the foundation because they built the structure and their identity is tied to its survival. If a woman's respect, intimacy, and patience fluctuate wildly based on the exact amount of money you are making or the exact level of status you currently hold, she is a tourist in your life. She is simply renting space in your reality until the lease becomes too expensive. And this is the pivot point where your awareness has to elevate. You can spot the tourist mentality by utilizing the hierarchy test. Watch precisely how she interacts with people who can offer her absolutely zero utility. Notice how she speaks to the valet, the junior assistant, or the stranger who inconveniences her in traffic. If she is submissive and enchanting with you, but arrogant and ruthless with them, you have not discovered a high-value woman. You have discovered a highly skilled chameleon. A woman who operates as an architect does not need her environment to dictate her morality. Her baseline level of respect is permanently stitched into her DNA. Her behavior does not oscillate because her standards are governed by her own internal compass, not by the transactional value of the people around her. When you finally align yourself with this tier of character, the exhausting paranoia vanishes. You no longer waste mental bandwidth wondering what she is doing on her phone because you understand you are not dealing with a fragile performance. You are dealing with an unbreakable core. The second invisible stress test is where the vast majority of men get utterly destroyed, and it happens when the dynamic transitions from a state of desperation to a state of abundance. As men, our deepest biological wiring drives us to provide and protect. When we find a woman who is struggling, whether she is drowning in debt, battling emotional trauma, or trying to launch a career, we instinctively step in to be the hero. We build the walls, we fight the battles, and we stabilize her world. And because it feels intoxicating to be needed, we make the fatal error of interpreting her desperate reliance on us as unconditional love. But the darkest truth of human psychology is that you never know how a prisoner truly feels about the warden until the cage is unlocked. The absolute ultimate reflection of a woman's character is not how intensely she clings to you when you are the only life raft in the ocean. It is how she treats you the exact second her feet touch dry land. When she finally secures the promotion, resolves her trauma, or builds a powerful new network, the utility you provided is suddenly obsolete. If her loyalty and warmth were simply a currency she used to purchase your protection, that currency will stop flowing the moment she no longer requires your services. This psychological phenomenon is known as the scaffolding syndrome. In construction, scaffolding is a temporary structure built around a building to support the workers while the actual foundation is being laid. But the second the building is stable, the scaffolding is viewed as an ugly, unnecessary eyesore. It is systematically torn down and discarded so the building can shine on its own. Countless men function as the scaffolding for a woman's glow-up. You finance the degree, you absorb the manic episodes, you provide the safe harbor. But once she crosses the bridge into her new elevated reality, she suddenly decides she has outgrown the man who built the bridge. If you notice a sudden chilling distance, a newfound arrogance, or a constant irritation with your presence the moment she achieves stability, you must face the brutal reality. You were not cherished for your soul, you were utilized for your function. A woman possessing elite character does not rewrite the history of your sacrifice just because she has evolved past her need for it. She does not treat you like a discarded tool once the job is finished. She remains fiercely loyal because her appreciation is tethered to your intrinsic value as a man, not your external utility as a life support system. When she stays with you and multiplies her devotion because she actively chooses to, rather than because she is forced to by circumstance, you have finally found a partner. Do not ever ignore the deafening silence that arrives when her basic needs are finally met. That silence is screaming the exact coordinates of your future. The transition from utility to sovereignty is the graveyard of modern relationships. The danger amplifies the moment she steps into her power. The exact second the power dynamic levels out, her genuine attraction is put on trial. If her affection was entirely predicated on what you could do for her, the removal of that requirement destroys the bond. She will begin to pick fights, she will withhold intimacy, and she will start auditing your flaws with a magnifying glass to justify her sudden loss of respect. But a woman of true substance operates on an entirely different frequency. She recognizes that the resources you provided were a symbol of your character, and she repays that character with permanent allegiance. You have to burn this into your mind. Temporary benefits like financial bailouts and emotional labor can buy you an extended lease on her attention, but only a fundamental alignment of core values can purchase permanent respect. The absolute gold standard of female nature is the woman who looks at you with the exact same level of admiration when she has her own millions, as she did when she had nothing. When her participation in your legacy becomes a voluntary contribution rather than a mandatory extraction, you have successfully beaten the game. But the most agonizing part of this journey is not spotting the manipulators. It is fighting your own biological urge to stay with them. This brings us to the psychological prison of the sunk cost fallacy. This is the cognitive distortion where a man will stay anchored to a sinking ship simply because he has already spent 5 years bailing water out of it. You look at the thousands of dollars you spend on vacations, the endless hours of couples therapy, and the sheer volume of your youth that you poured into her, and your ego absolutely refuses to accept the loss. Your brain desperately tries to shield you from the trauma of failure by whispering that if you just try a little harder, if you just communicate a little better, you can force her to morph into the woman you originally hallucinated. You repeat the mantra of weak men everywhere. We have too much history to just throw it all away, but here is the bridge you have to cross to reclaim your masculinity. In the realm of character evaluation, history is completely irrelevant if the foundation is rotting. Pouring your absolute best effort into a woman who views you as a utility is the equivalent of pouring premium gasoline into a car with no engine. The fuel is expensive, the effort is massive, but the vehicle is never going to move forward. You cannot negotiate genuine desire, and you absolutely cannot purchase internal character by just holding on longer. Every single day you spend trying to resurrect a dead dynamic with a woman who only loves your utility is a day you are actively stealing from the high-character woman who is waiting for you in the future. Shattering the illusion of the sunk cost fallacy requires a level of savage internal honesty that most men are terrified to face. You must look in the mirror and accept that the time you wasted is gone forever, but the decades ahead of you are still yours to protect. Achieving clarity in the face of betrayal is agonizing, but it is the most merciful pain you will ever feel. It is infinitely better to amputate a diseased limb today than to let the infection kill your entire legacy tomorrow. Walking away from a bad investment is not a failure. It is the ultimate flex of masculine self-respect. The purpose of this movement is to construct an army of hyper-discerning men, men who navigate the modern dating market with lethal precision and unshakable emotional control. We are not here to play toxic power games, we do not monitor text messages, and we absolutely do not live in a state of reactionary fear. Those are the tactics of boys who are terrified of losing their toys. Instead, we are mastering the stoic art of pattern recognition. We let the silence do the talking. We observe the data, we calculate the trajectories, and we execute our decisions without a drop of hesitation. If a woman proves that her character is an immovable object, you give her the world. But the exact second she demonstrates that her loyalty is situational, you must possess the ice-cold detachment to walk out the door and never look back. Because a hollow foundation will inevitably collapse, and you cannot afford to be inside when the roof caves in. Now, I told you at the very beginning of this video that there was one specific, hidden psychological tell that would reveal everything you need to know about her true nature. And here it is. It is called the asymmetry of grace. Pay microscopic attention to how she reacts the very first time you fail. Not when you are strong, not when you are providing, but the moment you lose your job, the moment you show a flash of deep insecurity, or the moment you make a financial catastrophic error. A woman performing on a software patch will immediately punish your weakness. Her tone will become contemptuous. She will weaponize your vulnerability against you in future arguments, and her physical intimacy will dry up overnight because the utility machine has temporarily broken down. But a woman with a permanent internal operating system of loyalty will view your moment of weakness as her absolute greatest opportunity to prove her worth. She will step into the gap, she will shield your pride from the world, and she will offer you the exact same grace you have been offering her. The asymmetry of grace is the ultimate lie detector. If she cannot hold you up when you stumble, she does not belong beside you when you conquer. I want to build a masterclass of experience right here in the comments. I want you to drop down below and tell me about the exact moment you realized you were just the scaffolding in her life. What was the exact action that made the mask slip, and how did you cut the cord? Write your story down because the man reading it might be exactly where you used to be, and your words might be the exact blueprint he needs to escape. If this breakdown shattered the matrix for you today, hit that subscribe button, join the most ruthless analytical community on the internet, and send this video directly to a brother who is currently drowning in a sea of performative loyalty. Keep your eyes open, guard your legacy, and never ever settle for a tourist when you deserve an architect.